Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Richard Attias.
Bonsoir.
Good evening. I have the extreme honor to be welcoming and spending a little time with the Minister of Trade, Industry, Investment and Digital Economy of the Moroccan Kingdom, Mr. Moulay Hafid ELALAMY. So you're also an officer of the Foundation of the Princess El Salma, who is also in partnership, of course, with the First Lady here in Gabon, whom I salute in passing. You are first and foremost also one of the major captains of the industry, and you have also been the president of the Employers Association for a few years, and I'll never forget this mandate, actually. I think it was going much beyond my hopes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think this country of yours, Morocco, and to some extent I consider myself an inland myself. How can we describe the situation, or how can we take the pulse of Morocco in its current African context? Thank you very much, Mr. Attias. And if you will allow me a small digression, of course, I'm particularly happy to be sitting next to you on this panel today. I think we've known each other for a long time when in our distant youth. And I am so happy to see that your ambition, in a positive way, has driven you so far and where you are today, to be in a position to create and set up an economic forum with such a widespread positive impact, basically, and echo all around our continent. And I can only wish for the rest of us to bounce upon that sort of dynamic momentum. And what I remembered from the president's intervention, in fact, was that he also pursued such a positive ambition for his country. To come back to Moroccan now, the ambition of the kings who succeeded one another in our dynasty, in fact, have always demonstrated a rather strong and positive ambition as well to transform or bring their country forward. And now what built the Moroccan model that you referred to, in fact, can be summarized in a few words, I think. We moved from 5-year plans to 5-year plans, basically, trying to follow up with the situation. And then Morocco had to pull itself together and make a decision to better define where it wanted to stand, basically, and to implement action plans and specific strategies to reach those goals. One simple example, in fact, has to do with the automobile industry as well as the aircraft industry, where we decided that Morocco suddenly needed to become a worthwhile and noteworthy stakeholder, basically, in those sectors. And in fact, we have more than 100 aircraft makers in the aircraft industry, and same thing for Renault, which is now settled in Tangier, under the aegis of Tangier Med, and a lot of manufacturers also standing behind Renault on the Moroccan soil. So all of this goes to say that ambition is really a key factor to transform your own and other people's mentalities and lives. So there's perhaps sometimes a gap between ambition on the one hand and then the actual mindsets. So between the vision of a leader and the followers, so to speak. How can we bridge this sort of gap? Well, I believe you can perhaps explain or account for that in 2 very simple factors. Suggestions. There's on the one hand a will to transform the country, but then it has to be followed by an action. And this can only happen probably through a generational transformation as well. This, for 2 reasons, happened quite happily or turned out quite happily in Morocco, because a lot of people retired as King Hassan was accompanied by a whole generation turnover. And then a whole generation of new skills, new expertise, and new international influences could be strategically positioned. And it's remarkable to see how, in a few years, a whole new generation took over. Of course, in high hybridation with the previous generations and in peaceful, harmonious intertwinement between the newcomers and the old ones. And that really got things started in a rather smooth way without hitting the wall, basically, or without encountering too much resistance. So I think over the past month we saw His Majesty King Mohammed VI in a lot of negotiations with a number of heads of state from Senegal to Gabon on a couple of times, I think, including the Ivory Coast, the Guinea-Conakry, and Mali, and so on. Is this a new trend or phenomenon, this will on behalf of Morocco to go or head towards sub-Saharan regions? In fact, Mr. Attias, I suppose you're well placed to know even better about it than myself, but I'll comment on it also. In fact, it's probably going back to deep-rooted convictions in Morocco. In fact, we believe that we're closely connected to our sub-region and continent. We're sharing some common values, culture, and therefore we also need to be pooling from our common political assets as well throughout this part of the continent. So this resulted in a number of fruitful collaborations over a few decades. And I must say that we've experienced some remarkable, exceptional moments of sharing, exchanges, the will to develop things in common. And I was under the impression, as I think most members of the delegation, that we felt at home in every single one of those states, in fact. And I think in every one of those states in which His Majesty managed to sign several dozens of conventions and agreements or contracts, how did you manage to then implement those agreements and conventions and to make more of wishful thinking out of them, basically? Well, there was a total of 91 conventions for 4 countries, to be more exact and more precise. So that indeed is rather impressive for anybody wanting to keep track with what is going on there. But I nevertheless have to say that a commission was set up, in fact, on the day following our tour, in order to monitor on a weekly basis of those 80, of all of the conventions, in fact, and 80% of the projects started or initiated by those contracts and conventions were, in fact, fully launched and implemented at the term foreseen. And this includes a number of private-public partnerships that then undergo that type of monitoring and follow-up surveillance. And of course, we're not going to satisfy ourselves with just good intentions. We really want to implement those South-South partnership projects and ideas, basically. So we're certainly not going to stop at a sort of a theoretical framework, and we've kept ourselves busy exclusively with really practical aspects of those agreements and conventions. And in fact, so briefly, I think you've, among others, had to defend an acceleration plan of this industrial growth plan by the Horizon 2020, if I'm not mistaken, so over the next 6 coming years. Recently, in collaboration with His Majesty, with your King. So can you try to summarize in a few sentences what sort of visions and ambitions, or perhaps implementation lacunas which you could reveal to us, basically, and then what sectors, in your view, are most favorable to developing quick partnerships with Morocco, and what else needs to be basically improved? So if you want to do a very brief topical summary or balance sheet, basically, of what Morocco has been trying to implement in terms of emergence plans. The most recent one was an industrial emergence plan that has been recently revised, and I think at the light of the latest development, we have a very strong need for more employees. We'll need 1.3 million new jobs to be created, and this is crucial to our industrial development, obviously. And after diagnosing those figures, basically, and as we said before, it's essential to keep our ambitions as high as possible. We've set ourselves an objective of 500, the creation of 500,000, so 500,000 jobs to be created between 2014 and 2020. So again, this may be setting ourselves extremely high standards or may appear unrealistic or difficult to achieve, but nevertheless, we've already started with a number of limited federations to set up or delineate the practical aspects of this plan. And in fact, we've proceeded in a rather unusual way with respect to the standard line of priorities. We start with a modest first figure, say create 10,000 new employments, and then accelerate exponentially. We've decided to do it exactly the other way around. So the first year, over the 2 first years, we want to already create and open about half of the vacancies of the jobs that we had to create for the whole period. And I'm already willing to give you a scoop now. We've already overtaken the 150,000 that we'd set ourselves as a target for the first year of those 2 first years. We've reached the 174,000 number that we could never have imagined in the beginning. So all this goes to say that where there's a will, there's a way, and that, of course, ambition is completely central to this success, as long as it's reasonable and carefully measured and calculated, of course. But when all of these factors are pulled together, then there's no limits, in fact, to our reasonable and desirable ambitions. Now, leaving politics aside for a few minutes and turning again to your more economic activities, you're also a captain of the industry. We now have to salute, in fact, the arrival of the President of the Republic, Mr. Ali Bongo Ondimba.
Donc,
So, for a few years before assuming the portfolio of minister, you were also heading the group Saham, which is also part of the Moroccan history. Could you say a few words about this to us? Very briefly, what Saham is a group, the DNA of which is sheer trust. Insurance, in fact. We had a very good, reliable insurance company in Morocco, and we decided to develop. And the first reflex you have usually when you're on a continent is to be heading towards Europe. So our first move was to go out and buy another insurance company in Europe, and I must confess that this was a totally, we'll say, complex, if not chaotic path. So we gave up on the idea and decided to focus on our own continent. Starting from 5 years ago, a single insurance company, which was how big? 300 million euros worthwhile in terms of turnover 5 years ago. And now we've attained 35 different branches of the same insurance company in 20 countries. And we're Pan-African leaders, in fact, in terms of insurance outside South Africa, of course. But let me reassure you, when we pool all our energies together, and after all, you're giving me the opportunity to talk about this experience. So no raiders could have pointed to that Moroccan company, even though it was of fairly reasonable importance on its own territory. And the minute we started constituting ourselves in a Pan-African group, there all the censors of the most important multinationals in the world jumped into their aircraft to come and talk to us and to notice us, basically, as the first or better position on the continent to be their counterparts, basically. So what I'm saying here is that if you manage to pool your resources, experiences in your companies or branches together and to connect them in smart grids or economic interest groupings, then you'll start existing not only on your own continent but at the level of the planet, basically. And this is very important, not only in our personal example. I think many other groups have probably taken the same path, and I can only wish for an ever-growing multiplication of such examples. Congratulations. Thank you. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, we've discussed a little bit about the private sector. We only have 1 minute left. I'd like us to talk briefly of your work in the context of the foundation, Princess Alamala. Can you tell us a bit more in terms of humanitarian initiatives and actions? What's going on there? Well, I had the privilege to take part in the foundation struggle against cancer as a whole, not only women's cancer. And I must say that a few years ago only, on the thousands of cases declared, only about 25% of them were correctly taken care of. Now we can proudly say that 100% of the cancers are handled, actually, and often with the contribution and the partnership of certain laboratories, Laboratoire Roche, the French laboratory, being one of them, and I will allow myself to make their publicity, given their noble contribution. And we're lucky enough to offer some innovative pharmaceutical medications that are normally very costly and inaccessible to the needy population in those cases of cancer. And this in collaboration with a number of hospitals and rehabilitation houses, in fact, that can now help and accompany people suffering from this disease, basically. So it's a very worthy activity that gives a lot of meaning to my life, actually, because I think when you're lucky enough to contribute to such humanitarian causes, in fact, you definitely impulse your life with a greater meaning than in some other sectors. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister, for all of these testimonials, and you can go back and sit among the regular members of the audience before moving on to the next panel.
Avant de passer à la prochaine séquence,
Before we move to the next session, I'd like to take advantage of the presence of His Excellency, the President of the Republic, and new signings of agreements. So please come here on board. New contract between Gabon Oil Company and the ANPN, the National Gabon Agency for Natural Parks. So Gabon Oil Company decided to sponsor movies which will be produced to promote tourism in the natural parks of Gabon. This is part of the strategy of Green Gabon. The signature will be done between Serge Boulikima, who is the CEO of Gabon Company, and the Professor Soua, who's the Executive Director of the National Park Association.
voilà comment le...
This is how energy and nature get married and conclude a partnership. For those visiting Gabon, please don't only come from New York, from Africa, but also to visit these extraordinary parks, which will soon be promoted through these movies. I will call on board on the scene in a less industrial framework, a partnership which was finalized in the framework of this New York Forum Africa, particularly interesting, between the Foundation for Africa. This is the Chess Foundation of Garry Kasparov, world champion, signs a partnership contract with the Association of Chess Players in Gabon to promote chess playing in Gabon, particularly in schools having specific programs. Garry Kasparov and Patrick, the president of the Chess associations of Gabon. Where is Gary Kasparov? Well, he should be somewhere around here. He might be concentrating somewhere. All right. We will sign this in a few moments. He might probably be getting ready since, as you will see, Gary Kasparov will be a speaker here. He will, at the same time, simultaneously play against 6 teenagers and children to see how to inspire these young guys. This year at New York Forum Africa, there have been 5 important contracts signed on Friday. This represents a value of more than 1 billion euros and will create thousands of jobs. We are asked, for instance, pragmatic results. Here they are. There's a small video summing up these signing of the contracts. Here's the video.
Liées à la gestion des eaux de pluie et à la lutte contre les inondations à Libreville. On peut résumer ces causes d'inondation à 3 principaux facteurs. Tout d'abord, l'habitat anarchique, l'incivisme de certains citoyens qui continuent à jeter leurs ordures et leurs déchets dans le lit des rivières. Certaines buses, certains ouvrages hydrauliques sont sous-dimensionnés et n'ont pas été conçus pour évacuer les eaux en cas de pluie très importante.
À l'occasion du New York Forum Africa, le gouvernement de la République gabonaise va signer avec le gouvernement français une convention de prêt d'un montant de 110 millions d'euros, destiné donc au financement de l'aménagement du bassin versant de Guégué. Il faut savoir que l'aménagement de ce bassin va améliorer les conditions de vie d'à peu près 100 000 personnes vivant dans ce bassin. Nous allons donc déplacer 3 000 personnes qui sont logées dans l'emprise du projet, qui vont être relogées du côté de Coq à Opusoane, parce que le gouvernement a opté pour une indemnisation foncière en lieu et place d'une indemnisation financière.
Voilà, on me dit que Gary Kasparov se concentre.
Well, Gary Kasparov is still concentrating. He will sign later on the agreement. Before the official ceremony, take advantage of the presence of the president of Gabon under his patronage. Will be designed. You have accepted to sponsor the first African Design Award. We often talk about large industrial infrastructure, agricultural projects, but there's also one area that is arts, culture, and within that, design. This award will be given, it's a very talented designer, Mr. Isham Lalou, to join me on the stage. Isham, please join me now. Now, in a few words, what is this award about? How many candidates, how many countries, and what is the designers? First of all, it's an initiative through the whole African continent, saying that the young ones have to have the opportunity to be well known and to make heads of states of the continent and important people either from private sector or public sector to understand the importance of design, since it creates innovation, helps improve the brand and the image of a country. We received, the project was announced in January. We worked on it for a few months. We received, over a month, 280 candidatures, and we retained 160 over 4 countries. The first award to be announced is attributed to an organization initiated through Denmark, so meaning by that working in network and synergy is important. It's the Organization Design Network Africa, DNA, represented here by my friend, designer, coming from Denmark, based in South Africa. So the person here who should come join here is Cheikh Diallo to join us on stage in the name of Design Network Africa. Let us give a row of applause. That's a nice award, isn't it? Congratulations. And the name of your company is nice. DNA, that's a very nice name. Isham, I saw that. You had 2 trophies. Does that mean that the 2 winners? I took the opportunity to thank His Excellency, the President, the First Lady, for the first edition for Africa Design Award, to give to His Excellency an honor award to thank him. Well, Guy Kasparov is now here. Gary.
So before you have to play against 6 teenagers, donc je vais appeler sur scène Gary Kasparov. I will ask you to.
Please, Gary, join me with Patrick Begonneau. So Gary, please give a standing ovation to Gary.
No, it's in last year I visited 20 African countries, so and I feel very comfortable here. So by the way, I have to say that these conferences the organization is impeccable. So I visited many conferences, but the way it's being organized, the logistics, so it's just from the airport to the last moment in the audience, it's perfect. And so
this is Gabon.
Yes, this is Richard.
No, so Gary est le seul champion.
Gary is the only champion, remember, who succeeded in beating a computer. I'm calling here Patrick Begonneau, president of the association, the Chess Association. Now, here he is.
My name, I tried to rush in, but the actual guard blocked me because there's the rules. You're not supposed to come in before the session is over.
Gary, can you tell us in few words what your foundation is doing in Africa with the kids and the teenagers?
Okay, fine. I tried to do it in a few words.
Yeah,
okay,
few words. You will have time after when you have your speech.
Yeah,
but we want to know why you are signing this convention.
I have 5 foundations. Okay, hi. I started it's many years ago, so one in New York, in Brussels, in Johannesburg, in Singapore, Mexico City. African Foundation is the most dynamic one because we succeeded in raising corporate sponsorship, also private donations to promote chess for education. I will have more time to explain why it's important, but so far we had phenomenal results, both with improvement in curriculum, but also with social adaptation. And again, it's quite important. It's a very inexpensive tool. It's a perfect educational tool. Again, I will explain it in more details for the 21st century. Both for kids that have problems with reaching the normal educational level, but also for, for the kids that are just looking for improving their results.
Thank you, Gary. Donc, je vous laisse signer votre convention, partenariat entre la fondation de Gary Kasparov pour l'Afrique.
Between the foundation of Gary Kasparov for Africa and the Association for the Development of Chess Playing in Gabon.
Gary nous disait.
Gary was telling us earlier that how much a chessboard, which is very cheap, can be introduced in schools for young ones of 6 years old. I mean, the results in maths and science improve so much. Therefore, in Gabon, this is going to be implemented in different schools through this partnership and the association. Gary will come back on that, and he's already started in other countries, like, for instance, in New York, in Harlem schools. The results are exceptional. Again, please, big round of applause for this partnership.
Voilà, dans quelques instants.
Now, in a few moments, I will ask Christine Kelly to come back for our last panel, gathering a few personalities, young women being agents for transformation. We have talked about all sectors of transformation for Africa, but the coming hour, leading us to the final session, will be dedicated to women and the so essential human capital for our continent. As soon as our two friends here will have finished signing, Gary Kasparov will stay with us to show to us what he still knows how to do. By the way, Gary is a candidate to the president's of the Worldwide Federation of Chess, elections to be held next summer. Well, there's a lot of paper to be signed, huh?
Serious one. Voilà, bravo.
Well, it's done. Congratulations.
Et là, je vais laisser la parole à...
I now give the floor to Christine Kelly.